Welcome to the Kawartha Small Business Podcast, where we believe the Kawarthas can be the most thriving region in Canada for small businesses. So we created a podcast where we have million-dollar conversations that help small business owners thrive. I'm Brian Rump from Profit Coach.
And I'm Matt Garrity of Managee Digital.
And we're recording from the Thrive Podcast Studio at Thrive Co-working Community in downtown Lindsay, Ontario at 18 Kent Street West. Our sponsor today is Digital Service Squad. Are you a small business owner looking to take your business online? From e-commerce to social media, Digital Main Street has free training, tools, and resources to help you jump in and grow your digital presence. Visit www.kawarthalakes.ca/digital service squad or just search in Google for Digital Main Street, Kawartha Lakes for more info. All right, Matt, today we are talking about building wealth as a small business owner. Now, this is an episode I wanted to have just to talk about how you need to view, wealth building content, building wealth as a small business owner, because I think it's fundamentally different than most people. And there's a lot of mainstream advice that I frankly just think is dangerous, and helping, to sort of understand a couple of concepts, I think will help people just feel a lot more comfortable with sort of where they are in building their wealth. I also think there's people who think you can't build wealth as a small business. It's some sort of choice you make when you get into small business that you kind of give up on the idea of building wealth, which I think is also ridiculous. So why not have a $1 million conversation about it?
We have very similar opinions of this. I was going to joke that there's two sides of this, where the fake news media and people often think that small business owners are rich. They've got a lot of money. But I think the fun thing to do for business owners is to cry poor all the time. And you talk to any small business owner, none of them are really like, oh, we're doing well. It's always crying poor. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's false. I don't know if it's just like a trendy thing to be doing, but it's kind of funny. We think the same way.
Yeah, I think there are people who, are never doing as well as they think. And I think they should be doing better. That's kind of what my whole business is about, is I do believe that you can and should be able to build wealth as a small business owner. You don't have to cast off the idea of wealth to sort of get into this benevolent cause for your community where, you are delivering this business that doesn't make any money. Like, I think people can make money and should make money with a small business. And it's not a trade-off for that. But I also think how you build wealth is different, because sometimes once people start making a little bit of money, they start trying to fast track building wealth, or they start trying to employ strategies that just don't make sense for them.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I do think that there's so many businesses that I worked with or even myself, when you make a bit of money, you have like very profitable, you take that money and you don't know what to do with it. You're like, well, I've never had this money before. What do? I'm going to buy a boat.
Yeah.
or just do some nonsense, or I'm going to buy a building instead of renting anymore. Well, now the logical step, the banks have told me for hundreds of years that owning property is what makes sense. So I need to buy an office. Doesn't make sense most of the time. Or like, okay, now we've made all this money and we're going to hire 20 people to do all these things internally, when realistically you don't need a lot of those internal resources. So
yeah, and I think that's the part where we transition from sort of making money to building wealth. So when you're making money, I find a lot will do things like that. It's like they get this idea in their head that, I should hire all these people. Well, maybe that's not the investment that your business needs. Mm-hmm. Or they'll do things like, well, I've got to own a building. And that's, I've talked about on this show before. I'm not a big real estate at all costs person. Like, there's a great joke about people think, well, there's no better investment than real estate. And my response is usually, unless you understand math, and like index investing over the long term. And almost every time you sit down and do the math from any point to another point, real estate is not the best investment. It comes with costs, but a lot of times business owners like it because they can see it and feel it. So, and it might work for you and it might be what you want, but don't automatically think that that's what you must do. A lot of people also will jump in and they'll make a little bit of money and then they'll leverage it by borrowing, money to buy real estate. So it's like you're taking on a giant new debt to be able to own this real estate, and it might be holding you back from actually building more wealth.
It would honestly cost you a lot more in the long term owning an office than just renting it. Like if you have a leak in an office you're renting, you're not dealing with that, right?
Do you know how many times, so in my grant business, people have phoned and been like, I need a new grant from the roof on my building. And it's like, well, that doesn't exist. There's no grants for that. And then people are like honestly surprised. And you get into like a big commercial building, you got a giant flat roof, there's like gravel up there, and it's like, it's not cheap to maintain. But that's a part of the cost of doing business and owning a building. So a lot of times, if that's not the business you're in, like it's a poor business decision, but it's also not really helping you build wealth in the long term.
Why is building wealth as a business owner, sorry to transition, but someone getting this conversation back on track, why does it seem like it's such an embarrassing, shameful thing to want to do?
Well, I think everyone should want to build wealth. And I think my goal in this episode isn't to sort of sell people on the idea of building wealth. It's more how to think about it as a business owner. Because I think there are the two camps, which is people make nothing.
Yeah.
And then there's people who immediately want to go to making a huge amount and having all sorts of wealth, and often they'll think about properties, or they'll want also vacation properties. These can sometimes just be expenses, or they want to immediately start diversifying as well. That's another thing you hear. It's like, oh, I need investments, I need to diversify. Sometimes your best investment is your own business or investing in yourself. And you don't have to be on the same track as everyone else. If I have, if you have maybe a really good salaried job, the best way to build wealth is to spend less than you make and slowly save a little bit every paycheck for the rest of your life. Business owners typically have a much higher risk tolerance. You might be going years without doing that. So it's about building that income and then being able to invest it. Sometimes that's your own business. Sometimes I would say business owners need more cash sort of wealth than to jump in and start reinvesting it into other things. And it's just thinking about that differently.
Yeah, and like we all get into business we all become business owners for many reasons, almost all the time. In the top 3 reasons why you're going to be a business owner, it's because you want to make money. You want to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't want to be rich. That's subjective. But like you want to make a lot of money, right? And there's some businesses out there that, they're cause-based, for instance, or circumstances where you're inheriting a business. But if you're like, okay, I have a solution to someone's problem and I don't want to work for anybody else anymore, I can do this and make a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with trying to acquire wealth and build wealth. I think you said you didn't want to like convince people that that's like a fine thing to do. I think it's fine to talk about. Like it's a very good thing.
I know.
Do, right?
I guess I'm just assuming people are already wanting to do that.
I think they do, but they won't talk about it because even right now when we first started, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to be shy about this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to pretend that I got into a marketing business because I wanted to save the world and make everybody rich and live.
You just want to help small businesses and help people, and I think that's noble, but also we want to be creating businesses that provide wealth for our families.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't be doing this if I was not getting paid for it. And I wouldn't be doing this if I was making the same amount of money that I was on a salaried income.
Yeah.
Right? I'm on salary now, technically, because I'm incorporated. But when I was employed by someone, if I was making the same as I was then, I wouldn't do this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think, we were here to make money. We're here to make business and strategy. We call it above average returns.
Mhm.
I think you want to earn above average. I think sometimes when we hear the word wealth, we think of outlier, sort of crazy level wealth.
Mm.
You're probably not going to be a trillionaire being a small business owner. That's okay. But you can still build the same level of wealth you could
Mhm.
working in an above average wage somewhere else. And I think that's where I want to help people understand that in your business, you have to get to the point where you're making money, you're putting some away or to the side, you're investing in yourself and your business. Some people start making a bit of money, and then the first thing they do is they start cutting expenses, or they start looking at cutting things because they get in maybe that safety mode versus and it's still a balance, because you don't want to then some people will just go all in and they'll hire 1 million people and then be like, oh, this doesn't, they try to scale too fast and they burn money, but then they get scared again, so they just kind of keep draining their wealth. Whereas if you look at building it slowly, you look at constantly investing in yourself and your business, you shut out what everyone's trying to tell you to do.
Mhm.
I've seen people hurt their business because they'll immediately, buying the building. So they'll go from, say, $2,500 a month rent for their office to $6,000 a month principal and interest, and taxes, and then they got to start putting money away for when the roof leaks and all of this stuff. And they think, oh man, well, at least I own the building. But you're draining your business of that extra cash flow, which could be used to make you, $10,000 more a month, right? So I see that type of thing all the time. I see people who they're trying to shortcut it a bit. So they make a bit and then they're like, okay, I want the big fancy truck. I want to own the building. I want to, do all of these things that maybe lead to your version of success, but they kind of just kick you in terms of actually building wealth.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a small business owner. I either just started or I'm in the camp of I don't make any money. Where do I start?
Making money. So that's the first step. I think that's the other thing too, is depending on your age and life stage, this is a broader society thing where there's all this pressure on you to be rich really quickly. I think when you decide to start your own business, you want to build it so that it's going to be profitable and make you
Mhm.
some money, but you also need to have patience
Mhm.
in terms of sort of what you're building, um, investing in yourself, knowing sort of that you're building something for the future, and then with the plan of what to do with that. I think as a business owner, it's understanding that your business and yourself are your biggest asset.
Mhm.
When we look at investing, and I probably should have did a disclosure at the start of this that I am not providing financial advice. I should also note that I do have a personal financial planner designation. So this comes from some educated terminology, but I'm not giving anyone specific advice based on their situation. This is general advice for everyone. But when we look at investing, people will talk about, oh, got to diversify your portfolio, which is true. And I always say we have to put ourselves in that portfolio.
Mm.
So, if I am going to a job every day and I'm investing, $200 a paycheck, I diversify that investment. If I'm investing in my own business, guess what? Me and my business are now a huge percentage of my portfolio. So it's going to hurt me more if I fail, but it's also going to earn me a lot more if I succeed
Mhm.
with that. So when we do have accumulated wealth from that, we don't necessarily need to go over, diversify in something else. Like we just have to be cool knowing that we're over diversified in ourselves. So invest in yourself and make more money.
So the first thing to do is make money. So like just sales, just go out there and try to make sales.
I think sales, it's understanding what your business is. So you have to know, what is it that I do that provides value? Am I making money? Every business is going to be different, but that activity, I think, has to start fast. I think, everyone's in their own position. If it's going from into a side hustle, into a small business, I think there's a directly sort of an inversely proportional level of effort if you're investing a lot of cash up front in that business, or if you need a lot of cash to live on, then you need to put a lot more effort into just getting traction on sales as fast as you can to start proving what that is and get your income up, or find out what it is you do that people are willing to pay for.
Yeah, I think so many people spin their tires when they're getting their business going, trying to figure out frameworks, process. This is how we're going to sell stuff. This is what the service offering is going to be down the road. And I'm like, just go sell something for whatever and figure it out from there.
Yeah, I think that's I want to say mistake I made when I sort of got into self-employment. Didn't really have a plan for it. Kind of knew some things I wanted to do. I took some odd jobs. I think now it's like when I can see and label some of my mistakes, I was fortunate in that I wasn't under the pressure of like, okay, must make this amount of money. It turns out I did. Like every month I actually made the minimum I needed, but now with the benefit of that, it's like I spun my wheels too much. I think it's worked out well for me in the coaching business, because now I could see that, and I could see it in others. And the goal is, we don't know exactly what's going to work. So you got to get out and sell. You can fix certain things later. You can get more organized later.
Yeah.
It's easier to build a process when you're managing some chaos than it is to, like, a lot of people want to build it from scratch before. And I've done the same thing. I've like built these processes or thought about these things. It's like, oh, well, when I get busy, I'll have to do this, this, and this. But what I've learned is when I do get busy, it's not at all like how I planned. It's like something completely different. So it's like, now you got to rebuild it anyway.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, just cover that when you can, but like, just start.
I think some people have the ability to just sell stuff too. And like, I think there is a skill. I will have that conversation with you and anybody else. But I do believe some people can sell and some people, I don't want to say can't. They're just more natural. Like they have the ability to go out and sell stuff.
Yeah.
And I've worked with a lot of contractors that have started talking to me and wanting to work with me because they want to then, okay, let's learn from Matt and then springboard into my own thing. And then they realize, I don't want to do my own thing. I like being somewhat sheltered here. And someone's like referred to me as their agent, where people come to me, they give me work, and then I give them to that contractor or whatever.
I think that is in business, understanding the value chain of like, there's people who are great at opening leads, people who are great at having sales conversations and assessing, about selling, about doing the work. So it's finding where you are in that chain and partnering with people. So if it is those, there's some freelancers you work with who are amazing at the thing they do, and they should be, investing in themselves as a business and just being really good at that. Yeah. Versus I think sometimes people will beat themselves up about the skills they don't have.
Yeah.
But it's like, go out and find, the Matt who is your agent and can bring that work into you, and invest into your skills at being so good at that you can command a premium for that work. And then that's sort of your path to building wealth. And you're still selling, you're just selling to Matt, who's going to go sell to 20 other people.
Oh yeah.
Right. So it's, I think, getting comfortable with that. And, as we talk through this, one of the first steps for a small business owner, especially, is, the path to wealth is through you. It's not external things. I think sometimes we hope, and a lot of people, my term wishonomics, they wish for that lottery ticket, or that, hey, I made all this money on crypto, or you hear people like, oh, got to buy dividend stocks. Dividend stocks are the way to go. And, that's great, but you need a lot of money first to be able to put into that. And that's more people diversifying their income. And there's no shortcuts to, being able to get that. And people will jump to that and hope for it. But if you can invest it yourself and find out what makes you the most money in the way you want to do it, then you'll be able to build money and figure out later what to do with it.
Mm-hmm. You definitely need that coach and guidance though, when you've made that money, to kind of figure out, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah, and you need to know yourself, right? And then the other thing to be wary of is the people who are like, oh, what do I do? I know this guy who makes lots of money or seems to have a lot of wealth. I will tell you, that person is not as rich as you think. I've seen lots of people like that, where it's like, oh, they've got all this money. And I was thinking, as I was preparing for this morning, of all the times in the bank where I've had these so-called rich people looking for stuff, and I'd have to do net worth statements and declaration. And I'd just be like, well, where's their money? Like, you think they're rich, and it's like, they're not rich at all. And some people will stash it in assets. So they'll have like all the trucks and equipment and stuff where, like, if things get bad, they can sell it. But it's always at a discount to what they paid for it, right? Or they have the building because they can see it. But oftentimes it's like, it's just their business and it's their ability. And you'll get entrepreneurs who they will take on debt. They will have all this stuff and not really money, but their number one wealth generating asset is still themselves. And they know that, hey, if it all crumbles, I'll just start fresh again. And some of the richest people I know are people who have they've been bankrupt. Because what they've done is they realize that, hey, they are that asset, and they will invest in themselves. They'll hire a coach, or they'll have multiple coaches for different things, or they'll niche into like their skill set. And then from there, they will, build their wealth and sort of diversify and add to it as it comes, but not sort of try to shortcut the process.
Sure. So what are some of the names of the people that we all think are rich locally but aren't as rich?
I won't share those, which is fun. And to be fair, I have been out of that game for a while, so I haven't seen anything, but it's made me very confident in knowing like what to believe, what not to believe. And even, there's times where I'm like, well, maybe I don't know, or like there's something I don't know. Or maybe like finance has changed.
Sure.
And almost all of those times, like something blows up or something happens where it's like, oh no, I am not, I know what's going on still. So, and I think, and it's okay, more power to people. You got to find what fits for you as well. When you do, when you start building that wealth and you figure out what investments, if you do want to diversify, help you. I think there's people who are suited to things like real estate, or they're suited to managing properties. And there's certain businesses, like I know someone who was in a trades business who was amazing at buying properties that he would renovate, rent, hold for a while and sell. But this was someone who had access to the labor and the know-how.
Sure,
was able to spot those things and liked doing the work. So that business made sense for them. If you did the math, oftentimes, and this is the funny thing about personal finance, if you do the math and it's like, well, if you'd taken all that money and put it in like an index investment, you'd have more now.
Yeah.
Right? Slightly more. Usually it's always a bit more. But it's what you are comfortable with. And for that person, it was still their skill that made them money the way they wanted to, and it built the wealth that they wanted. They weren't jumping in to try to do something they weren't good at.
Mhm.
I've seen that with, for some reason, I think there's a lot of people who are obsessed with getting rental properties who have no business being in rental properties. And they're like, well, I'm going to make all this money in my business and I'm going to buy a 5-plex.
Oh.
And that's my ticket to wealth. And it's like, what I want people to understand is, no, your ticket to building wealth is you and investing in you and your business. And then what you do with that might help sustain your wealth or diversify it or provide you other incomes.
Mhm.
But that number one thing, if you are a small business owner listening to it, is you and investing in your skills, being patient with your business and building wealth with your business.
That's awesome.
And just knowing that, conventional wisdom, you're heavily diversified in one business, right? All your shares, your portfolio is mostly in your one business, but making that worth it for yourself.
For sure. That's awesome.
Awesome. Any other thoughts? I know this is my soapbox today.
No, it was good. And I just thought it was interesting because, we know I am never paying attention to what we're talking about until I sit down here. But immediately just thought about that notion that small business owners almost take pride in saying they make no money. And I don't really understand why we do that.
Yeah, I think, and that's another one. If you're listening to this and you're like that, just book a call with us. Let's talk you out of that. I think you don't have to be Jeff Bezos, or you don't have to be the person who earns money walking all over people. But there's a lot of people who build great wealth solving problems for other people. And if you're wired to get into a small business, I think you're wired to do that. And it's just a matter of having confidence to know that you are your biggest wealth building asset.
I remember years ago now when the conversation came up with my parents about me starting Matty G Digital. And my mom was just like, oh, you're going to have to work 20 hours a day. Those guys like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, they work 20-hour days. And in my head, I'm like, that's not even close to what I'm wanting to achieve. It's not even a comparison. Why do people think that you have to work 20-hour days to make a Jeff Bezos, an Amazon amount of money? It makes no sense.
Yeah, I think that's the other part is we picture that, whereas the reality is almost all businesses are small businesses.
Yeah.
And lots of people make money and build their wealth through small business, and you don't have to have outlier gross wealth to build a perfectly awesome life.
Absolutely.
All right. What's the one thing you want people to know about you, and how do they find you?
You think I'd be prepared for this now, but I'm still not. I want people to know that the demographics of Kawartha Lakes are changing and more people are moving up here. That means more and more people don't know that your business exists and that they need to be found on Google. I can help you have your business found on Google in less than 60 days. Just reach out and book a call on my website at mattygdigital.com.
Awesome.
That was really good, though, considering I wasn't prepared.
That's pretty good. Let's give you some props. Good job, me. All right. And I want people to know that I am the business coach and teacher that's going to help your business get money with grants, increase sales, and streamlining your business for revenue and profit. Find me at profitcoach.ca. Matt and I collaborate often to help you start, grow, and recharge your business, and we want to work with you. If you want to discuss working with us or be a guest on the podcast, send us an email to set it up at kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca. And remember, we believe the Kawarthas can be the most thriving region in Canada for small businesses.